Ananya and Meera were just two sisters from a small Indian town, dreaming of wealth and freedom, when a promise of luxury in Dubai turned their lives into a nightmare they could never escape. Ananya and Meera grew up in a small, dusty town in India, where opportunities were scarce and life was a constant struggle. Their family lived modestly, and from a young age, the sisters learned to dream beyond their immediate surroundings. Every day seemed the same, helping with household chores, attending school, and watching their parents worry about money. Yet, the sisters carried an unspoken hope that life could be more than just survival. They spent hours imagining a future filled with freedom, travel, and luxury, things that seemed impossible in their world. One evening, as they scrolled through social media on an old, shared phone, a message appeared that would change their lives. It came from a man claiming to be a wealthy sheikh from Dubai, offering lucrative work opportunities for young women in modeling and business. The message was polished, full of promises of luxury apartments, designer clothes, and high-paying jobs. The sisters were captivated. For the first time, the world seemed within their reach. Their hearts raced at the thought of escaping the monotony and poverty they had always known. They spoke in hushed tones about the possibilities, imagining life in glittering hotels, shopping in massive malls, and traveling freely across the world. The idea of being able to support their family while living a life of comfort was almost too good to resist. The Sheikh's words painted a perfect picture, and the sisters, trusting and eager, began preparing for their journey. As the day of departure approached, excitement mixed with a faint unease, but it was quickly pushed aside. The dream of wealth and freedom was stronger than any doubt. Without realizing it, Ananya and Meera were stepping into a world far different from the one they had imagined, where every promise of glamour could hide unimaginable danger. Their journey to Dubai began with hope, but the darkness that awaited them was closer than they could ever have guessed. When Ananya and Meera first arrived in Dubai, they were overwhelmed by the city's dazzling skyline and the sense of wealth that seemed to fill every street. Towering skyscrapers glinted in the sunlight. Luxury cars roared past on wide roads, and the air smelled faintly of something foreign and exciting. The sisters felt as if they had stepped into a dream, a world so different from the narrow lanes and crowded markets of their hometown. Everything they had imagined about wealth and opportunity seemed to be real, and for the first time, their hearts felt lighter with hope. The sheikh welcomed them with warmth and charm. They were given lavish clothes, expensive jewelry, and introduced to people who appeared important and influential. At first, it felt like the fairy tale they had always longed for, an escape from hardship, a chance to live a life that seemed untouchable in India. They attended parties in grand halls and dinners in luxury hotels, their every need anticipated. Friends back home would have been envious, and the sisters felt a surge of pride, believing that they had made the right choice. But beneath the surface, cracks began to appear. The initial kindness soon gave way to subtle rules. They were constantly reminded not to speak to outsiders and to follow strict routines. Phones and passports were taken under the pretense of official procedures. The glamour that had drawn them in started to feel like a cage. Meals were timed, movements were monitored, and even small questions about their freedom were met with thinly veiled warnings. Despite the unease, Ananya and Meera clung to hope, convincing themselves that this was temporary and necessary to secure their dream life. The bright lights of Dubai masked a creeping reality. The luxury and attention were not gifts, but tools of control. The sisters' excitement began to mix with fear, and the first whispers of danger whispered through the glimmering city that had seemed so perfect. As the days in Dubai turned into weeks, Ananya and Meera began to notice the subtle, unsettling changes in their environment. At first, the rules seemed like minor inconveniences, meals at strict times, curfews, and constant supervision. But gradually, they realized that their freedom was being stripped away. The passports, which they had assumed would be returned after paperwork, were kept under lock and key. Their phones were heavily monitored, and every message to family or friends required approval. The sisters started to feel the walls closing in, though outwardly, everything appeared perfect to anyone observing. Small incidents began to unsettle them further. Delivery men or staff would occasionally whisper about other women who had come to the city with dreams and never returned home. Ananya tried to dismiss these stories as exaggerations, but the fear in Meera's eyes was hard to ignore. Even simple outings became calculated moves. They were never allowed out alone and were always accompanied by someone who watched their every action. The luxurious apartment, once a symbol of freedom, started to feel more like a gilded cage. At night, the sisters would lie awake, questioning their choices. The Sheikh's charm and attention during the day masked the tension that thickened the air after sunset. They noticed inconsistencies in what they were told about work assignments and events. Some promises, like meetings with high-profile clients or modeling gigs, never materialized. Ananya's unease grew stronger, and she tried to reason with herself, convincing Meera that patience might lead to the opportunities they had been promised. But a deep, gnawing fear persisted. The sisters realized they were no longer in control of their own lives. Each day, the carefully constructed facade of wealth and glamour became more transparent, revealing a reality of manipulation and control. What had begun as an escape from poverty was transforming into a trap, one that seemed. Ananya could no longer ignore the reality they were living in. The luxurious surroundings and constant attention from the Sheikh had begun to feel like a prison. She noticed the patterns of surveillance. The guards who walked past at precise intervals, the cameras hidden in hallways, and the staff who watched their every move. She realized that every detail of their lives was being monitored, and any misstep could bring consequences they could not predict. The sisters had no legal protections, no one to turn to, and the promises that had lured them to Dubai now felt like cruel illusions. Quietly, Ananya began observing the staff, the security routines, and the timings of when the Sheikh left the residence. She and Meera spoke in whispers late at night, carefully planning every detail of a possible escape. They mapped the exits, memorized the locations of cameras, and watched for moments when supervision was light. The sisters understood that one mistake could cost them their freedom, or worse, their lives. The fear of discovery was constant, but so was the growing determination to regain control of their fate. Ananya also began gathering information about other women who had come to Dubai under similar promises. Some had vanished entirely. Others had managed to escape and return home with terrifying stories of captivity and coercion. These accounts fueled her urgency. She realized that their dream of wealth had been nothing more than bait, designed to trap vulnerable girls in a carefully orchestrated web. Despite the danger, hope persisted. Ananya and Meera were careful not to panic, instead using each small observation as a tool in their plan. Every day was a balancing act between survival and preparation. The sisters' bond grew stronger, forged in secrecy and fear. They knew that if they were to escape, it would require patience, courage, and precise timing. The plan was risky, but staying meant surrendering to a fate far worse than the uncertainty of the. The night of their escape was filled with both terror and determination. Ananya and Meera had spent weeks carefully observing the routines of the guards, the staff, and even the Sheikh himself. Every step had been memorized, every potential obstacle considered. When a moment finally arrived, they moved with a mix of fear and adrenaline, slipping silently through hallways and past security cameras they had studied for days. Their hearts pounded with hope and anxiety, knowing that freedom was just beyond the walls, but also that failure could mean permanent imprisonment. They reached the outer gate, expecting to find it unlocked during a scheduled shift change. For a fleeting moment, the city lights of Dubai shone like a beacon of hope. The streets beyond promised anonymity, help, and a chance to contact their family. The sisters' minds raced with visions of reunion and safety, their long-held dreams finally within reach. They took cautious steps, blending into the shadows, believing that the worst was behind them. But the freedom they had longed for remained just out of reach. Suddenly, figures emerged from the darkness, intercepting them before they could reach the main road. Panic surged as the sisters realized that their every move had been anticipated. The guards, trained and alert, were relentless. No matter how quickly they ran or how carefully they tried to hide, Ananya and Meera were overpowered. In an instant, the streets that had seemed full of opportunity turned into a trap far more terrifying than the one they had left behind. After that night, the sisters vanished completely. Investigators would later find no trace of them in the city, and their family received only vague, unverified reports. The Sheikh disappeared from public view, and rumors swirled about secret compounds and hidden networks. What had begun as a daring attempt at freedom ended in a chilling disappearance. The world outside Dubai remained unaware, and the sisters' fates became. Months passed after the sisters' disappearance, and the mystery surrounding Ananya and Meera seemed to deepen. Families in India grew desperate, clinging to faint rumors, while authorities in Dubai maintained a quiet silence that only fueled speculation. Investigative journalists, driven by curiosity and the haunting nature of the case, began piecing together fragments of evidence that suggested something far more sinister than a simple disappearance. Reports emerged of young women arriving in Dubai under similar promises of wealth and opportunity, only to vanish without explanation. Whispers among local workers hinted at hidden compounds and secret networks operating under the cover of luxury and legitimacy. Each new account painted a chilling picture. The Sheikh and his associates were allegedly part of a human trafficking ring, using glamour and wealth as bait to lure vulnerable women from across South Asia. The patterns were consistent, the methods meticulous, and the reach seemingly unstoppable. Investigators traced bank transactions, travel records, and communication threads, revealing a sophisticated operation. Luxury apartments, private jets, and high-end restaurants were all used to maintain the illusion of opportunity while concealing illegal activities. Witnesses described women being held against their will, forced into labor or worse, while authorities struggled to navigate the layers of deception and corruption. Despite these grim revelations, Ananya and Meera's fate remained unknown. Each lead ended in dead ends or unverified sightings, keeping hope and fear tightly intertwined. Their story became a symbol of the hidden dangers behind wealth and glamour, showing how easily innocence could be exploited. For those following the case, the sisters' disappearance was not just a tragedy, but a warning, a chilling reminder that even in a world of luxury, darkness could lurk behind the brightest lights. Years passed, and the case of Ananya and Meera remained a haunting mystery. Families never stopped hoping, clinging to the possibility that their daughters were still alive somewhere. Investigators in India and Dubai followed every lead, but concrete evidence was scarce. Then, a confidential tip reached authorities about a remote compound in the desert, hidden far from the bustling streets of Dubai. The location had been off-limits to outsiders, shielded by high walls, guards, and surveillance, making it nearly invisible to casual observers. Authorities moved cautiously, coordinating with journalists and local informants to investigate the tip. When they reached the compound, what they found shocked them. Several young women, brought from different parts of South Asia under false promises, were living in captivity. Some had been there for years, isolated from the outside world, and forced into labor or other controlled activities. DNA tests, identification records, and personal belongings helped confirm the identities of some victims, though the whereabouts of Ananya and Meera remained uncertain. Witnesses described chilling routines. The women were closely monitored, forbidden from speaking to outsiders, and punished for even minor disobedience. The Sheikh and his associates were nowhere to be found, having disappeared before authorities could act. While the rescued women were freed and began the long process of recovery, the sisters' families were left with more questions than answers. Every recovered woman carried fragments of the same story that Ananya and Meera had lived: false promises, coercion, and the constant fear of discovery. Despite the uncertainty, the operation offered a glimmer of hope. The sisters might still be alive, held in some other hidden location, and the revelation of the desert compound proved that the trafficking network was real. For investigators, families, and journalists, the case became a relentless pursuit, a search for truth in. The story of Ananya and Meera remains unresolved, leaving a chilling mark on all who followed it. Despite years of investigation, tip-offs, and partial rescues of other victims, the sisters' fate is still unknown. Their disappearance serves as a stark reminder of the dangers that vulnerable people face when drawn to promises of wealth and luxury. Families continue to search desperately, holding on to the smallest threads of hope that one day the sisters might be found alive, though each passing year deepens the shadow of uncertainty. The case sparked widespread awareness in both India and Dubai. Campaigns were launched to educate young women about the risks of human trafficking and the tactics traffickers use to manipulate dreams of opportunity. Social media and news outlets highlighted similar stories, showing that no amount of wealth or glamour can guarantee safety. Ananya and Meera's story became a cautionary tale, warning that appearances can be deceiving and that danger often lurks behind seemingly golden opportunities. Authorities continue to investigate trafficking networks, learning from past failures to identify and protect vulnerable individuals. NGOs and support groups work tirelessly to provide resources, safe havens, and guidance for those at risk. Though the sisters' physical whereabouts remain unknown, their legacy has inspired action and vigilance that may save countless others from similar fates. In the end, Ananya and Meera's story is more than a tale of loss. It is a reflection of resilience and the fragility of hope. While the world waits for answers, their names remain etched in the consciousness of those who seek justice. The darkness of their disappearance contrasts sharply with the light of awareness and change it has generated. Though the sisters may never be seen again, their story continues to resonate, haunting, warning, and inspiring, a testament to the hidden dangers behind the glittering promises of a world built on wealth and power.